falling. I won't stop falling. I won't stop falling in love. Oh, and you've got me started. You've got me started. You've got me falling in love. Yeah, we're cruising, packing up our bags, we're moving. We're listening to our favorite song to you all night long. And it's night time, catch another break and unwind. I'll be there with you real soon. Thank you, fellas. Thank you so much. Hoping to see you again very soon.
Yinagalang, Gibirgalang, Ninyogir. Yundi Ruth Davies, Balladu, Jermalinya, Wiradjuri Yina. Miagandi Pollards Boo, Wedges Boo, Dicey's Boo, Wagadi Boo, Leighton de Boo, Yanko de Boo. Nadu, Yinjamali, Balga Balga Bangno Boo, Balagir Bang Boo, Balambambao Boo. Nadu, Yinjamali, Guninaram Bang Boo, Babin Boo, Babin Weir Boo, Boy Galang Boo, Main Galang Boo, Gajira Galang Boo, Billagalang Boo. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and all of you who are present here tonight. My name is Ruth Davies, and I'm a proud Wiradjuri woman. My family is the Pollards, the Wedges and the Daceys, from Leighton, from Yanko, and from Wagga Wagga. I am very honoured to be walking in the footsteps of my Wiradjuri elders and leaders, and am very privileged to be here to welcome you tonight. I pay respects to my ancient ones, our spiritual ancestors, and our elders. I also pay respect to Mother Earth, to Father Sky, to our laws, our people, our animals, and our rivers. Gombana Wiradjuri Nurumbangu, welcome to Wiradjuri country. Gombana Bangambawathagu, welcome to Albury. My ancestors, the Wiradjuri people, have lived here for over 60,000 years, thriving by the Billagalang, the rivers, living with Guni Dagun, Mother Earth. We built our homes using the madan, the trees and branches. We clothed ourselves with kangaroo and possum pelts. We ate off and from the land. We were fit and healthy, prosperous people. We had societal structures and communities who cared and shared for each other within our own cultural laws and within our own community rules and responsibilities. Our culture is one based on love and kindness, Yinjamara, respect for ourselves, respect for others, and to go slowly, take the time it needs to be gentle, to be polite, and to honour. I also acknowledge and pay my deepest respects to every one of you here tonight. I say thank you to Annette and Stuart and the team for creating a space to allow us to gather together for so many years. You have united us. You have created a space of unconditional love and support and Yinjamara, respect for us, for the people and families touched. Tonight, we hold each other in solidarity as we remember together. I want you all to continue to hold each other, to remember Yinjamara, and remember the legacies of all those we have lost. Mandangul, thank you.
Hi, I'm Tisha and I'm a proud young Mullaroji woman.
And I am India, proud young Wiradjuri girl. We are part of Maley and Mob. We are honoured to be here at the winter Solsitce. We pay our respects to our elders, past and present, and all the other Aboriginal people here today. These dances are performed on Aboriginal land, always was, always will be. Wiradjuri land, we will be sharing Wiradjuri dance with you that we learned from Uncle Duncan and Jaquita and Wiradjuri Echoes.
Tonight we will perform a sweeping and cleansing dance. This is to welcome our creative spirit, Bayami, Mother Earth, and our ancestors to be here with us. We dance to connect with our ancestors. Our ancestors are who we dance for. To make them proud, we want you to take this opportunity to think about your own ancestors. They are your link, your bloodline, your history. Take the time to think about them. You would not be here without them. Thank you for having us here at the Winter Solstice and for allowing us to share dance and some of our culture with you. Thank you.
How about the James Fallon Deadly Dance Group? A big round of applause. And in barefoot. Stunning and freezing. And yet they've brought that warmth of the evening tonight. Our final physical night here, and a lot more to come about that. But let me also thank the wonderful Northern folk who have been a constant for the last 13 years as part of the Northern folk. And wonderful to have Groote Eylands owned Emily Watamata also joining us tonight, a very special musical component. And while we are talking about music, we would be remiss not to recognise the absolute chutzpah of the Scots School Albury Pipe Band. Not only did they go along to Scotland to be crowned world champion at the bagpipes, but also they did it twice. It's a little bit like going over to Denmark and beating the Danes at Lego. I mean, it's an amazing accomplishment. And they are here in the heart of Albury. Also, too, a big shout out to Ruth Davies, Wiradjuri woman, a wonderful soul, a generous spirit, such a beautiful welcome to country, so inclusive, so positive. And also, if you want to see a manifestation of Ruth's work, you can go down to the Yandijimara Sculpture Park. And there in that second loop, she told me, not the first loop, but the second loop, there is some beautiful sculptures that she's done, the Bogong sculpture. She's also set up a Wiradjuri storyteller shop there in Lavington, a wonderful platform for artists who are looking for that next step with their practice. My name is David Astle, by the way, and tonight we are doing what Virginia Woolf mentions in Mrs. Dalloway. That's a book that was published almost 100 years ago tonight. And in that book, she talks about the fugitive thoughts of Clarissa Dalloway. And what tonight is trying to find that focal point, an anchor point for all those fugitive thoughts that we have in our hearts and our minds. These are the thoughts of anxiety, of fear, of sadness, of hope, of wonder. These are the thoughts that sometimes can absolutely engulf us. So tonight, this is a chance for all those loose threads to come and find the focal point right here in the heart of Albury. It's a real privilege to be part of the Winter Solstice number 13, and it's just as much a privilege to welcome Father Peter McLeod to the stage, a man who's been called one of a kind, St Matthew's rector, and he's also he's been deadly, and deadly's deadly, in terms of some great community causes too. If you could welcome Father Peter for a secular prayer.
Actually, David and I went to the same school and wasn't a secular school, but we've seeing the error of our ways, don't worry. And today, I'd like to acknowledge as the traditional custodians of the land, but also some traditional custodians of some really crazy ideas from religious organisations when they've tried to answer some really big questions. Questions about the nature of the world, about life and death, about contraception, diversity, the shape of the earth, and mental illness and suicide as well. And that has made us into fugitives from each other. And so we think about the way that so often, as we've been looking at these really big questions, we've actually been separated from each other instead of coming together. Tonight, I'd like to acknowledge the love that brings us together, and that love has a face, a number of faces. I have presided at the farewell for many, many people who have left life very suddenly. And have left us and their families, all it seems, in the lurch. And today it's in that pain and that love and that hope that we're joined together. Now, this is the 13th time. They said this might be the last time, but I'm just thinking about all those really powerful stories and those really powerful people that have actually brought us here over the last 13 years, and I don't think they're finished with us yet. So I think that this has been an amazing experience, but I think it'll continue to shape us and change us. And so this little secular prayer, it's a prayer that actually links each one of us because it is bound in the deep humanity, the love, the loss and the hope that we have for very special people in our lives and in our communities. We give you thanks for the special gift of our loved ones, whose memory connects us in a powerful way, continues to help our hearts to beat, gives lights to our mind and meaning to our lives. We thank you for all the passionate humanity that their lives, their experience and their departure from this life have also brought out, for the generosity and all the care that their journey has inspired, for the love that went before them, the love that holds us close, the spirit that shone from their lives and is now lost to our eyes but never to our hearts. And at a time when there are more missiles in the world than there used to be, we carry our loved ones in our hearts. May we walk gently together until you bring us all safely home. Amen.
Thanks, Peter. I should point out, and there will be more information coming your way, I dare say, a little later tonight about what the next chapter will be. If I could resort to Virginia Woolf for one more moment, this is a semicolon. This is not a full stop. It may be the end of the physical gathering that we do here, but there is another chapter, ongoing chapters in this wonderful initiative that was started here in the heart of Albury. So more to come, I dare say, a little later tonight from among our speakers and also from one or two of the organisers who I've managed to convince to come to the stage. And now that I've said that aloud, they'll have to do it. But it's probably before I introduce Liesl Jones, and I am very excited with Liesl Jones, Amanda Tattersall and Gideon Haig, each with their own perspective on that very big topic of how we are better together and how we can make that happen and why we need to keep together and keep talking. Reasons both personal and also reasons that might bring significant change with collective action. Those stories are coming your way tonight, always with a personal touch. But if I could just reflect for a moment only, thinking about the 12 years to date and now the 13th year, we've had blackouts. I think when we first turned up, we had no fires. Now we've got these wonderful braziers. We learnt very quickly about that. I know that we've had rain along the way. We've had frost. We've had State of Origin. We've had Wodonga. And it was wonderful at the Cube for that one. We also had a virtual pandemic version. We've had so many iterations, and it's just been a pleasure to keep steady, keep the faith, and keep coming together. And as a result of all those challenges, it's only just grown bigger and more multidimensional. Now, with wonderful Jess and other sign speakers, and also too now online, now right across the borders, both states and around the world. So it's a real credit to you guys who keep turning up and keep believing. So give yourselves a round of applause for being part of this, for the journey that's been so far. I met Liesl Jones for the first time tonight, 40 minutes ago, and I asked all those obvious questions. Did you get Liesl after The Sound of Music? No. Anagram of her dad, Leslie. Wow. I was absolute Play-Doh from that point on. I also said, why breaststroke? Why not freestyle? And she goes, I'm crap at freestyle. I reckon Liesl Jones' crap at freestyle would beat all of us right here. But she did say that freestyle, she did say, I should say, breaststroke chose her. And my God, are we grateful for that? She is in rare company, not just in Australia, in the world, for competing in 4 Olympic Games. She collected 9 medals along the way at Olympic level. At Commonwealth level, well, just to give you an example, 2006, she won the 50-metre breaststroke, the 100-metre breaststroke, the 200-metre breaststroke. I think that clean sweep has only been done a handful of times. That's Liesl Jones. She's been inducted into the Sporting Hall of Fame in Australia, 2015, in the International Swimming Hall of Fame in 2017, but away from the pool, away from the swimming. That's where the story really begins. As we learnt in her incredible autobiography, Body Lengths, where she talks about the importance of mental health, the importance of mental health advocacy, and the importance of just keeping yourself together as a person and keeping those that you love close. If you could give a very warm welcome to Liesl Jones.
Thank you so much for having me here. As someone from the Gold Coast, I would like to say we are not in Kansas anymore, Toto. It is absolutely freezing, and I've had a lot of people say that my jacket looks incredibly warm. I am in fact incredibly flammable, so it's not a very natural fibre in this jacket. It may look warm, so please do not let me near any of the open flames because I don't think I'll do very well. I'd also like to thank the Adventure Store that Amanda and myself bought thermals from today. We have a brand new pair of merino wool thermals on, and they are currently keeping me very warm. So I'm extremely grateful for Albury's Adventure Store, and I cannot recommend them enough. That is not a free plug. I did buy the thermals today, but it is a wonderful store, so I am very, very grateful that you have that. I don't have any gloves though, so my hands are a little bit cold, but again, don't let me near the fire. It is my absolute privilege to be here, and I do not take this lightly, that this is such a wonderful opportunity, because as we know, there are so many people here today who have been affected by suicide. And myself personally, not only have I suffered poor mental health, but I've also had many close friends, very near and dear to me, also take their life. And someone who is very close to me, who I work with, also shared a story with us on the Triple M and with me personally, that he had lost a very dear friend close to him. And it really made me realise that none of us are immune to it, whether we are suffering ourselves with mental health, poor mental health, or whether we know people who are going through it. But we are not alone. And we can tell by the wonderful turnout here this evening, and as you have for the last 13 years, that this is a topic that needs to be spoken about. And we all know that suicide is something that affects a lot of us. We can see that. We also know that those numbers are dramatically increased if you are a young person. It is one of our biggest death tolls that we have is in our young people. It is also increased if you are a First Nations person. It is also significantly increased if you are male, and it is even more times if you are a veteran. So if you have served in the military, your suicide rates are actually higher than what they are serving in the military, which is a pretty terrifying statistic, but it just goes to show that those numbers are very much very high. We also know, as we talk about survivors of suicide, that the people that are left behind generally are left heartbroken. There are so many answers and questions that they just don't have answers to. And that's probably the hardest thing. I think there's so many things that you would love to ask someone before they went, and you just don't get those answers, and that can be really hard as well. We also know that there's so much research. We know there's so much money going into it. We know I've myself personally have studied psychology, and we still have so far to go. We can never have enough awareness. We can never talk about suicide enough, and we can never talk about the people that we've lost enough. We never want to not say their name. We want to say their name more, and that's the way that we can raise awareness. Now, I have a feeling, and in my very limited research, please don't think I'm a psychologist. I've only done a Bachelor of Psych Science. I'm yet to do a whole lot more. But I have my general feeling and a general interest and think that there's two reasons why suicide might be an issue for us today. And this is an area I would love to research a whole lot more because I think our community could really benefit from it. But it's connection and it's identity. And I think that's two places where I personally went wrong. And I think that was two of the issues for me that really sent me off the cliff into poor mental health. Now, my name is Liesl Jones. I am a 4-time Olympian. And a lot of you might think, well, how is that even possible? Athletes are so mentally strong. We train for a whole lot of things. Physically, we are in peak condition, and mentally also too, we work extremely hard. And we can get through some of the toughest things in our life when we're training for an Olympic Games. But I'm telling you now, I was not immune to poor mental health when it affected me, and I had no idea that it was happening until it was in the final moments where I just did not want to be here anymore. So it's pretty dear to my heart, and I'm very passionate about being and having the opportunity to talk about suicide because it is something that I'm hugely passionate about. So there are 4 things I would love to go through with you today, and that is the decline in my mental health, so a little bit about my story and how I ended up getting there, how identity is so wrapped up in the things that we do and believe and how that can make you come unstuck. I'd love to talk about connection, whether that's with our community or internally and externally, and also the hope and the light at the end of the tunnel and how I was able to find that. If you hear my voice shaking, I am very cold at the moment, so if you hear my voice breaking, that's probably why. I'm not terribly upset, but I'm certainly not immune to poor mental health. For me, going back, if I look back at 2010 and 2011, so 2010 for me, my mental health really started to decline and I had no idea that it was happening. It crept up on me so quickly, and 2010 was really the catalyst for me where I started to lose my way and I just couldn't identify what was going on. But 2011 was when the wheels really fell off for me. I was sitting in a camp in Sierra Nevada in the middle of Spain. It sounds like the most glamorous place on earth, and it probably is, but for someone who is suffering with poor mental health, it was hell on earth for me. It was snowing every single day, snow up to your shins. We were training incredibly hard. It was at altitude, so it's already extremely challenging. You typically, because you train so hard, you lose a lot of weight because it's just impossible to keep on, but for some reason my weight just kept going up. It was frustrating, it was difficult, and it was challenging, and this is where, like a big pimple, my mental health just came to a head, and you just couldn't ignore it anymore. It was a crater that I just could not ignore, and for me, when it got to the point that my mental health was so poor that I was considering taking my life, and I am quite terrified to think of how close I came to that moment. And a coach knocked on my door one afternoon when I didn't come down for lunch, and he just knocked on the door and said, "What are you doing? Why are you here? Why are you not downstairs?" And I'm so grateful for that time, and I have no idea who sent him, but I think I didn't think I was going to get upset, but I guarantee someone sent him, and I'm so grateful. I actually did not want to get upset. But I'm really grateful for that time, whoever sent him and whoever was looking out for him, because not many people get that opportunity. I really didn't think I was going to cry. It was very challenging, and to think that I came so close and that not everyone can be there for everybody else at all times. You can never know what someone's going through. They can be going through it really silently like I was. And to have someone who was able to be there and to walk me through it, I'm just so incredibly grateful. I really did not think I was going to cry.
But yeah, it was just extraordinary that I had someone who was able to see that I was not doing okay. And that is not to take blame for anyone who doesn't recognise the signs, because I didn't even recognise them in myself. So that is no reason to blame yourself if you couldn't see it in someone else who was going through something, because sometimes you just don't. And some people hide it really well, and I think I hid it really well for a very long time. And it wasn't until everything just fell apart that I realised that I was really not doing okay, and it needed someone else to reach out to ask if I was doing okay. And it is so wonderful that we have all these amazing days and we do get an opportunity to talk about mental health, because I just had no idea what it was. I swept things under the rug for a very long time, and it wasn't until it came to a head that I was able to really tackle it head on, that I was able to work with a psychologist, I was able to be medicated, and then I was able to slowly get myself out. Now, I was talking about identity before, and this is a topic I'm really passionate about, and identity was such a huge thing for me, and I think it was a huge part of why everything started to unravel for me. And if you could just do me a favour, if you feel comfortable to close your eyes, if you would just, like as yogis would say, just look internally. But if you could just take a moment to think about something in your life that might have been the biggest thing ever to you. It might be having children, or it might be getting a really big job, or maybe it was a promotion, or maybe it was just something significant in your life. If you can just think about that time, and your whole life is wrapped around it. So every waking moment of every single day is spent going towards that goal or that dream or whatever it is, and every waking moment is spent dreaming about making that thing happen. It becomes who you are. It's every conversation you have is about achieving this one moment in your life. It's about becoming that thing. It's almost embodying this one thing that is very external from you. If you can take a moment to think about working towards that goal, and when you finally do realise that goal, that is what identity is. It's when you're so fused towards this one goal that it becomes everything that you are. Feel free to open your eyes if you do have your eyes closed, but imagine what that feels like when that thing is taken away from you. And that's what my swimming career was like. I had achieved that massive goal that I really wanted to achieve, and it was everything in my life. But the minute that the thought of it being taken away from me, my world completely crumbled. And that's why I'm so passionate to talk about identity, because I think a lot of what we do is we get caught up and then we latch onto one thing. And once that one thing is taken away from us, it becomes when your world crumbles around you, and that's exactly what happened to me. So 2008 was my big dream. So winning Olympic gold was the be-all and end-all for me. There was nothing else in my life. I had nothing outside of swimming. I had nothing outside of that goal. And once I achieved it, there was nothing left. And everyone asked me, oh, when you retire or when you want to move on from swimming, I will always be Liesl Jones, the swimmer, and I'm completely okay with that. But it wasn't until I contemplated what life looked like away from that I really came unstuck. And this is where my journey started. So 2008, I realised my dream of winning individual Olympic gold medal, and I was incredibly proud, but I felt incredibly empty as well, because I had nothing else outside of it. I had no friends outside of swimming. I had no focus on anything else. I had no dreams and no passion, and it was all taken away from me. So I had to rebuild from there, and that's where it started to happen, where I had no idea who I was as a person. So 2009, I struggled. I really started to decline. 2010, it started to get worse, and I just ignored everything because I had no idea who I was outside of being an Olympic gold medalist. And for me, that was incredibly challenging. And this is why this topic is so important to me and something that I'd really love to study, because I think identity is such a huge part, and it's a lot of what we do, whether it's our work, we identify with being a parent or a child or anything that's part of our identity, but when your whole world revolves around that and it's taken away from you, it's really hard to deal with. And this is where I want to talk about connection. Connection is the second topic that I'm extremely passionate about and something that I want to talk about tonight, but also study in the future. So for me personally, I believe connection belongs internally and externally. And when we talk about internally, it's that disconnection between mind and body. As athletes, we are just a body that works really hard and we train
hours and hours on end for our body to be in perfect condition, to be able to race and to perform. But we always forget that there's a mind that's controlling it as well. We have mind, body and soul, which all go together. And I had disconnected both of them. So my mind was completely neglected, and that's where my mental health really took a turn, because I just did not take care of both. I really took care of my body every single week. I would get massage, I would get physio, I would work in the gym, I would train in the pool. I would do everything for my body day in and day out, but I did nothing for my mind. I did not care for my mental health whatsoever, because it was completely neglected and was not important. And even as a youngster, when I was coming up, I was told that we were not allowed to use psychologists because psychologists were for weak athletes. So I was denied access to a psychologist as a 14-year-old girl who was going to her first Olympic Games, and that was devastating to me, because I really could have benefited talking about mental health, because I did not believe I was a weak athlete. I believed I was very strong, but I just did not have that connection with strong mental health and a strong body. So that internal connection between mind and body is so important. And this is where, outside of my swimming career and since I've retired, I've really learnt about nourishing mind, body and soul and that connection. I do love yoga. That's why I was talking about, the internal look when you do yoga, but I just love that connection. It's something that's really important to me, and I find it very nourishing for my body when I look after my mind as well. So that internal connection is so incredibly important. But it's external connection that I think we sometimes struggle with, and it's something I personally struggle with. So just a little bit of personal insight. I've just moved to the Gold Coast and I've been there for 6 months, and I've really struggled. I've struggled to find my community, I've struggled to find my people, and I've really struggled to immerse myself into the community on the Gold Coast. And I've felt incredibly lonely the last 6 months. It's been very difficult. But it is that sense of community that I'm very much looking for. It's finding the people that I want to be around all the time, and I want to spend my time with and share stories with and catch up with coffee and go to the beach. And I have found very much that external community is very much lacking in my life at the moment. And I can certainly see where mental health takes a slide when you're not feeling that sense of being a part of a community and that connection externally. So that's something personally I'm working on at the moment. So I know eventually I will get there, but I'm very much a Brizzy girl at heart, so who knows if I'll ever get there. But connection I find extremely important. So finally today I'd really like to talk about the hope and the light at the end of the tunnel. And I distinctly remember sitting down with my psychologist after 2011 when my mental health and contemplated taking my own life. I remember sitting down, I distinctly remember Lisa saying to me, she said, "There is light at the end of the tunnel." I was like, who bloody blew it out? Because I can't see it. And I just feel like it's never getting any closer, but extraordinarily it does. And that light will always be there, but you just have to find it, and sometimes you do have to light it yourself. It is a lot of work, and getting through it is incredibly challenging, and to be the person that's left behind, especially if you are family, friends of someone who has taken their life, it can be very hard to, I guess, evoke some hope for people, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. So if you are going through something personally, please know. It may not feel like it and you may not believe it, but there certainly is hope at the end of the tunnel. It's a lot of hard work. You do have to work through it, but the first thing is recognising that you may have a problem and that you may want to work through it. It is incredibly brave to go and seek help. I've got a mental health care plan. I'm about to start with a psychologist on Tuesday. It's all about taking that first step, getting in there, really digging deep. It's gritty, it's awful, and it sometimes feel like it's a waste of time, but trust me, it's so worth it, because there is hope out there. There are people. Just find your community, find that connection, that sense of identity of who you are. Make sure it's not too connected. Those are my two key things. Identity and connection are so important. I want to thank you so much for having me today. It truly has been an absolute pleasure. I really hope, and I'm grateful that I've got to be a part of the last one, and I can't wait to see what the future of this event is going to be. This is just extraordinary, and I really, truly feel so privileged to be a part of it. And I want to thank you all for coming out here this evening. I hope you have a wonderful night. I'm very much looking forward to some soup because I'm so cold. My hands are freezing. I should have put some gloves at the adventure store today. But my name is Lisa Jones. It's been my absolute privilege and pleasure to be here with you today, and thank you so much, and have a good evening.
I just realised we did it all backwards. We've asked Liesl Jones, one of our country's best breaststroke swimmers, to lead the relay. It doesn't make sense if you think about it. But I'm so glad that that's the way we've done things tonight, because having such a personal story as an opening story, said with such candour, has really brought us all closer. And I'm very grateful for you, Liesl, for being so open with us tonight and sharing that story. Coming up, this next artist I met some 8 or 9 years ago with a tape measure in his hand. He was measuring the distance between the stage and the front row audience, as well as the fourth wall. It was all to do with the performance in honour of Marcel Duchamp, the surrealist. And David Stavanger, our next guest, a poet, a psychologist, is also, as that tape measure story suggests, something of a maverick, of a creative, and always playing with the mind. His poem that he's about to share with us, it's I've Been Thinking About Your Birth Lately, is a very poignant, personal poem that we were so privileged that he could come and share with us. And after David shares that, we are also delighted to have Northern Folk join us for their song as part of tonight's performance. So firstly, David Stavanger.
So good to be here. I am a poet. I'm a lapsed psychologist. I need to say that. I was a psychologist who ended up on the other side of the system. Had a major mental health episode, major bipolar. I come from a family of intergenerational bipolar and hospitalisation. Lapsed, but it's still in play. It's so amazing to be here on Wiradjuri country. I wanted to acknowledge Auntie Ruth, welcome to country, and also the amazing Wiradjuri poet who comes from these parts, Auntie Janine Lane, who's a friend. Incredible country for poetry. If everyone looks to their left, the person to their left right now, just look closely, the person to your left, just really take them in. Now take in the person to your right really closely as well. Unfortunately, one of those two people is a poet. Just take that in, that's a truth. I've been wanting to come for about 5 years. I've known the Bakers for about 5 years. I run a project called Mad Poetry, which is about platforming lived experience voices, and particularly institutionalised voices who are often unrepresented in the arts and who often don't get to write to their experiences and reclaim and document those experiences using their own language. And I met Stuart and Annette through this Mad Poetry, commissioning poets to write about many things, including suicidal ideation in those spaces, and managed to put together this amazing anthology called Admissions, which documents over 120 lived experience voices from across Australia. And it includes a poem by Mary Baker, The Key, which I'm sure many of you know, and two amazing reflective pieces by Annette and Stuart. So I want everyone to give them a huge round of applause, because it's people like them that keeps people like me wanting to be here on this earth. So can you give them a huge round of applause? I was going to read a mental health poem, but I think I got known as a mental health poet. It gets a bit limiting after a while. It's part of who we are. You're not just your diagnosis or the suicidal ideation I've experienced for many decades. That's part of who you are. And it's gatherings like this and Mad Poetry gatherings of poets that we have through Mental Health Month in October. You can look it up online if you want to come into that community, that make a lot of us want to be here. It's being able to talk to these things in our own way, on our own terms, and being invited into spaces like this to talk about it that makes us want to be here. A big part of what makes me want to still be here is I'm a parent. When my son was conceived and then born, I was very unwell. I had to stop being a psychologist and was really struggling to stay here. And I have a lot of issues with memory. So this poem's trying to reclaim and narrate my son's birth at a time where I didn't really want to be here at all. It's called I've Been Thinking About Your Birth Lately, and I really want to dedicate it to Annette and Stuart Baker, two of the most beautiful parents I've ever known. I've been thinking about your birth lately, striving to recall details of how this started, the gasp of you under fluorescent light, dreamt up midwives and revolving shifts, witnessing labour stretch nights thin fray, and the transitions, canned laughter to small talk, the switch between active to tableau of rest, dilation of rooms and contraction of sheets. I can't remember what your face looked like under the medic's watchful eyes, whether you smelt of the hot milk of beginnings. Did I bring a change of shirt for the absence of euphoria, the presence of blood? Possibly a nurse was discussing the weather. Beyond the birthing suite, the sun had surely risen. It's impossible to say if I was in attendance, no drugs in me, anaesthetized in other ways. When you were conceived, I didn't want to live, courting the formation of a darker star. I still study your sonogram daily, this postnatal amnesia as sentence. I crave the crown of fine hair, the physicality of child, to hold a living thing, knowing it's as much mine as another's. The warm rubber of umbilical cord, thawed calamari tube, cut in two for takeaway. The placenta is the body's only disposable organ, though other vital parts of us are expelled after birth. I think we put yours in the freezer to deter predators and reassure other parents. History likes to record firsts. The first time I held you close, I caught fire. Earth-drawn boy, diving reflex engaged to free fall. Breaching silence, you knew my taste in music. Storage boxes forage for clues, trying to retrieve your arrival, I emerge with connective tissue. In that nursery of strange wet babies, considering flight from eternity's wing, monitoring breath's escape, units of dependency measured in the phrases of a lullaby. Sometimes I read your certificate as an unofficial record of life. I have the DNA, know the formal date, still fret when you're late. It's hard to say what kind of parents we will become. There's no way to inoculate against this future heartbreak. Thanks.
Come on down to the street, we'll give the magpies something to eat. You haven't left this room in weeks, and it's keeping me up at night. If you're out of luck and it's money you need, you know you can always ask me. I haven't much, but whatever I have is yours to keep. 'Cause the only thing I've learned in all the years I have on you is that each one is shorter than the last. So say your piece, say something mean, swing your fist or break something, and then leave it. Come on down to the street, allow some blood back into your feet. There's a boy selling lemonade sweet at the foot of a drive. You play tough, but you're needing with me. I have seen every scrape of your knee. This part's rough, but the life that you want is still within reach. 'Cause the only thing I've learned in all the years I have on you is that each one is shorter than fist or break something, then leave it in the past. Leave it in the past. It goes so It's the only thing I've learned in all the years I have on you is that each one is shorter than the last. So say your piece, say something mean, swing your fist or break something, and leave it in the
They may be down on numbers, the Northern folk tonight, but they're certainly not down on heart. It's been such a wonderful, constant part of the Winter Solstice event. They may have missed one or two, but we won't hold that against them. It's just a real privilege to have them on the stage and seeing them blossom and bloom as individual artists as much as they are the collective. That is Northern folk. If you'd love to know a little more about them, you can always catch up with their beautiful albums. I've got so many of them on auto replay, including Keep On Coming Over, which is one of the best songs about, you know, no matter if the door's locked, a little like we heard with Liesl Jones, I want you to knock, I want you to push that door down, I need you. And it's such a beautiful song. All of their songs are so beautifully crafted and great to have them there tonight. Also too, I neglected to say that David Stavanger, that poet who read that incredibly beautiful poem, I've been thinking about your birth lately. He has a collection of poetry that is called The Drop Off, which was with Upswell Publishing, and that's the same publisher who's also brought out that book that he mentioned and showed us called Admissions, which is Voices Within Mental Health. So if you'd like to seek out David's work and the work of those within the mental health, those are the two volumes, both with Upswell Publishing. I also neglected to say, and this is probably what burns me most, is that Stavanger, his surname is an anagram of vast range, as well as a vegan star, and he's both. Let's move on. I was going to introduce our third speaker, after David the poet, as being the reason that people buy newspapers, but he's just told me he doesn't write for newspapers anymore, and that is newspapers' loss, because he is one of the most incisive, gifted writers in this country across any genre that you care to name. I have been envying Gideon Haigh for the best part of 30 years, not just for his productivity, but for his excellence of writing, his mastery of the English language, and his bookshelf. If there was a German word, it would be something along the lines of Bücherregalneid, which is bookshelf envy. If you ever see a photo of Gideon Haigh in his word lair, he's surrounded by books. Most of them are cricket books, because that is his first love. Many of them are wisdom books, because he's been a long-time contributor to the Bible of cricket. But he has been valued around the world and recognised around the world as being one of the voices of cricket, one of the gurus of cricket. He's just as eloquent and just as cut through in areas of the law, in architecture, in business. He's written more books than he's had years on this planet. And I tried to play the alphabetical game with his backlist, seeing if I could make an A to Z. And I got up to about E, and I thought, actually, the only book you really need to read, if you want to know who Gideon Haigh really is his most recent and his shortest, and one that he wrote in 72 hours. It reads like that, because it is urgent, it is visceral, and it's all about his most precious brother, Jasper. The book is called My Brother Jazz, and it is the book that will bring the world of Gideon Haigh right to your hands. Gideon Haigh.
When the bakers last year asked me to Winter Solstice, they were kind enough to send, contained in a copy of Sean Tan's The Red Tree, some samples of their late daughter Mary's writing, her poetry and her responses to the poetry of others. I order my time carefully. Once I recognised the provenance of the contents, the item took up a place on my desk from which it could neither be removed because it was so obviously important, nor read because it felt so intimate. It was duly buried in the snowdrifts of work I'm ceaselessly pushing through. Still, I never lost track of it, and I knew that at length it would work its way to the surface when the time was right. Finally, a few weeks ago, it was. This event has now expanded well beyond the honouring of Mary, and I know the bakers are reluctant to accent their own grief in what has become a community of loss. But it has been something to share my desk with their daughter these last few months, to have her words, thoughts and image within my reach. Mary was clearly a precocious intellect and spirit, sensitive beyond all reckoning. I feel sad not to have known her, but also blessed to have read her. Next year, it occurs to me, she will have been gone as long as she was here. But what a life force that her memory has borne along this event through Annette, Stuart, Zach and Henri, and improbably caught me up in it. Because while my desk, as I said, is outwardly all confusion, it makes a silent sense. For on the base of my desk lamp is also to be found a tiny velvet jewel box. Open it and you will find two items: an earring in the shape of a marijuana leaf and a lock of hair. They belonged, of course, to my brother Jazz, who died in 1987, aged 17. There they have been lying these many months, Mary's words and Jazz's relics, several and joint, resisting forgetfulness as the people themselves recede into the past and form part of the giant communion that has brought you all here tonight. I feel self-conscious about this invitation. I've written a short book about Jazz, but that doesn't mean that I speak about him with any great facility. In some ways, I publish My Brother Jazz because I write more readily than I talk. And just because you've experienced loss doesn't make you generally an expert. You remain expert only in your own. So I proceed with some trepidation, knowing that we are all, in our varying ways, doing our little best to live on in the face of death. But this I have to say, for it took me a long time to acknowledge. There is something about a brother. For many years I found it impossible to get past the cruelty of my mother losing her son and the dignity with which she appeared to bear it. My mother was a solo parent and breadwinner to her boys, a woman with deep reserves of strength and not a shred of self-pity. She set a standard to which I could only aspire. I was, consequently, extremely reluctant to quantify what Jazz's absence cost me. But brothers are blood. Brothers commonly do not say much. Brothers communicate more readily by their deeds. But Jazz and I shared the same mix of DNA and bulk of childhood experiences. We were outwardly very different. We were inwardly variations on identical themes. In losing him, I recognise now, I lost a kind of counterweight to myself. And when a relationship so fundamental proves so perishable, further investment in others seems risky, if not altogether fruitlessness. Jazz was 4 years my junior. We were very much older and younger brother. I was earnest and biddable. He was lively, gregarious. I'm bound to say I envied him slightly. He was funny, irreverent, charismatic, made friends easily, was bright enough that he didn't have to work too hard, so didn't. I felt that older son pressure to make up for our father's absence by acting as his proxy. He experienced that younger son's ungraspable lack of a masculine example. He was big, taller and stronger than I. On the night he died, his passengers assumed he was old enough to be driving, mature enough to have wheels. In fact, he had no licence and had stolen our mother's car. I do not know if he took his own life. What I do know was that his driving heedlessly through a red light wasn't out of character. He was, after all, 17, an age where we're all taking risks and cutting corners. He was also, in his late teens, I sense, depressed, a state where you sometimes need the stimulant of danger to feel fully alive. So at 1 a.m. on a weeknight in our hometown of Geelong in 1987, you had to be pretty unlucky to encounter any traffic. You might easily have skated through that intersection, just missed the oncoming car, just cheated fate. Split second either way, and it might have become a funny story between us, and I, not here tonight. The fact that I am is also otherwise significant. In 1987, bereavement was a silent ordeal. My memory of it begins with very sharp edges. I can describe the immediate aftermath of Jazz's death in almost minute-by-minute detail. The spectacle of the car in the wrecker's yard, the sight of his body in the casket. For you have not fully grasped life until you have been, as it were, in the presence of its absence. Yet very quickly does all that memory go out of focus and out of shape. I know I delivered the eulogy, but I'm damned if I can remember a word. And I can't recall a single conversation afterwards. Actually, not for years can I recollect seriously reflecting on anything beyond the trudge to the next day. My mother told me recently that about 6 months later, in her school staff room, somebody cracked a joke. She laughed and immediately felt ashamed. For me, there was no danger of either. I can honestly say that the next few years of my memory, otherwise capacious and retentive, is all but blank. I love reading and music, but I have books from the time I have remained unable to read, and records I acquired I've never been able to listen to. I shunned friends, I scorned help, I moved overseas, I developed an eating disorder. I existed in a state as close to death as it was possible to be. And to be honest, that seemed to make complete sense. Why should I live on in Jazz's absence? And, as it happened that I did, why should it not be an ordeal? Perhaps you know this feeling also. For how are we to live, we survivors? The world can't just move on as though the lost do not matter. There must be some form of commemoration to counteract the world's apparent indifference. Most of us do not have the baker's presence of mind and sense of purpose. Our redress is to bear loss as a yoke, to carry with us something that, at the same time, we cannot bear to contemplate. The only way not to think about my brother was to think about nothing at all, save work, with which I filled every available minute of every day. Where it did break through, though, I could make sense of it only by self-mortification and self-denial. I'm a writer. I write as a living and a calling. I've published 52 books. On subjects of my choosing, I'm a clear thinker with lucid expression. But I hadn't a hope in hell of addressing the subject silently gnawing me. I straightened my shoulders and hardened my heart and worked like there was no tomorrow, because it often felt like I might not make it there. I could be, I confess it, my intimate partners and my professional colleagues will attest, an exceptionally difficult person to be with, averse to anything savouring of comfort or pleasure, intolerantly perfectionistic in my work. Even now, it's a constant battle to be otherwise. What changed? Nobody, and no one thing. Taboos around the acknowledgement of grief, as Solsitce affirms, have relaxed, but that did not influence me. I had good friends who were kind and supportive, but they did not reassure me. It's just that a few years ago, I started to do some things. One day I was passing the house where I was living in 1987, went in, stood on the spot where I received my mother's telephone call telling me that Jazz had been in an accident, and realised that the memory of that moment still lurked. One day I was in a bookshop and I saw a book, The Day That Went Missing, in which the author Richard Beard described his family's eerily muted reaction to the drowning of his younger brother on a family holiday, and it excited a pang of recognition. Then in 2022, I came up with an unfocused idea to look into the history of the coroner's office, which would involve several months of reading nothing but inquests, a genre of official record with which I have always been fascinated. Macabre, huh? But I threw myself into it with typical abandon. Only after several months of filling exercise books with notes did I begin to understand that this was my characteristic intellectual answer to an emotional question, that there was only one inquest in which I was genuinely interested, even assuming it existed. So I applied for the file concerning Jazz's death. It took 6 months to retrieve, another 6 months before I had the nerve to read it closely. But it was, after all, on the page and in my head, everything I had avoided, so long and so scrupulously avoided. We fear forgetting, don't we? We hold fast to our relics, our records, our images, our letters, because what if one day we should realise that the sound of our loved one's voice, the shape of their face, the feel of their touch has somehow slipped away? The fear, I found, was misplaced. I bridged 37 years in a heartbeat. My brother Jazz explains what I found there. What do I feel now? Part of me still burns with fury. I've been cheated of my brother's society and solidarity. He should now be 55, a blood-bonded friend of mine, a rugged son to his mother, a fond uncle to my daughter. Occasionally, in fact, my daughter reminds me of him, in the shape of her face and the cant of her head. I smart from the cut this realisation leaves. It's a reminder that I'm not quite whole and never can be. But something emerged from the 72 hours of writing this little book that the last 37 years of not writing it had suppressed. I was able, at last, to put the story somewhere else, to slip it between covers, to set it on a shelf in the corner where I could see its shape, study its dark lineaments, and generally separate myself from the need to carry it alone all the time. In doing so too, I finally saw him again. My brother Jazz, the only brother I shall ever have, and whom I shall miss every day for the rest of my life. Thank you for your time tonight. It's good to talk, isn't it?
just briefly, let me introduce one of the stars of Australian music. Her name is Emily Waramata. She's a proud Wanadilla Ojibwa woman from Groote Island originally, then grew up in Brisbane. A wonderful fusion of heritage as well, on top of her Filipino, Chinese, Spanish, Greek, Italian, Turkish lineage. And through that, she's been a warrior of her people in Northern Australia and First Nations people. She's won 6 Queensland Music Awards. For her EP that came out 2016, Black Smoke, was a stunning debut, and she's backed that up with new music ever since. 2018, the Milyak Bada album, and now 2024, only last year, Nada is the one to seek out. She won last year the Best Australian Contemporary Award. I think it's the first time that a woman, and a Indigenous woman, has won that award. She really is a trailblazer and a force. If you could make very welcome Emily Waramata.
Well, I wish I was that tall. Thank you so much. It's been beautiful listening to everyone talking. A couple of years ago, I was supposed to be supporting Kate Miller-Heidke on her Australian tour. And I started in the music industry when I was very young. I was about 14 years old when I decided I wanted to do this professionally. And back then, you know, if you didn't feel good or if you didn't feel okay, you just get told to get over it. And this particular trip, I decided to say no to supporting Kate and to put myself first. And it was the first time ever in my career I said no. And so my friends and I, we decided to go on a road trip up to Northern Territory from Meanjin, from Brisbane. And what was supposed to take like 2 weeks ended up taking 2 months. And every situation that you can imagine that happens on a road trip happened to us. We got stuck in this little town called Pentland, just on the border of Queensland and Northern Territory. We got shipped back to Charters Towers. Now, I'm sorry if you're from Charters Towers, but it was fucking boring. I think while we were waiting for our van to get fixed, we met this beautiful man named Uncle Marty who took us in. And we'd sit up on the hill in Charters Towers, watch the sunset and smoke bongs. And then our car finally got fixed, and our original destination was supposed to be Groote Island, my grandmother's country. And instead, I think ancestors guided us towards another path. And so we ended up at my great-great-grandmother's country, this little community in Northern Territory called Numbuwa. When we got to Numbuwa, I saw my auntie, and she was like, you know, there's all these rooms here you can sleep in. And I said to her, no, I'm right. I'm going to set my tent up on your veranda. And so I started writing this song on her veranda. And when I moved down to Lutruwita, to Tasmania, I finished it on my veranda. And I'm not very good at song names. This song's called Veranda. I wanna sleep on your veranda. And set my tent up for a week. The view I love on your veranda. It puts my mind so at ease. Honey's free, ease, padlocked with all the meat and sweets inside. The bus comes and picks you up too early, and I don't feel like coming for a ride. Well, can't you sit with me, can't you, young? Can't you tell me stories of people who have lived and passed on? Can this wait? Will this work at Monday? What's more important than sharing your story? Dance around the fire, it's a new moon. And you show me how lovely that this world can be. Yeah, we're singing to the moonlight. We're singing to the sunshine, singing to the moonshine, singing to the sunrise. I wanna cook damper on a fire and bully beef stew and sit under the rising of the moon. I wanna stay up fishing and laughing with you underneath the starry gaze of our ancestors. We're singing to the sunshine, singing to the moonshine, singing to the sunrise. We're singing, we're singing, we're singing. Oh, darling, we're singing, we're singing, we're singing. Oh, darling, we're singing, we're singing, we're singing. Oh, darling, we're singing. Thank you very much, you fellas. Have a beautiful night.
It's the first time I've met Emily, but I have been a fan of her music and have been playing her music on the ABC Evening Show for the best part of 7 years. And what a delight to meet her. She may be crap at naming songs, but she's beautiful at writing them and even better at singing them. What a treat. Thank you, Emily. Our final speaker tonight, if she was something on the shelf, she would be a sourdough starter pack, because she was just as hard to find during lockdown. That is, she's rare, and she makes everything she touches rise. She's been an absolute champion of change, an agent of advocacy and activism. She started up the incredible digital advocacy agency called Get Up, and if you haven't come across that force, find it on getup.org.au. She is at University of Sydney. She is an urban geographer, which sounds like one of those dusty old jobs, but she has made it an absolute platform of radical change, whether it's involved in student unions, in the peace movement, in the refugee movement, in the mental health movement, in the climate movement. She makes things move. She is an agent of change. She's a force of good. Her book is called Power in Coalition: How Change can make things happen in an age where the government is only worried about the bottom line. You can hear a lot more from Amanda Tattersall through her Change Makers podcast. And if you did a little bit of a bingo card on that introduction, you realised I've mentioned change about 9 times. There's a very big reason for that. If you could make very welcome Associate Professor Amanda Tattersall.
Who doesn't want to be called sourdough starter? So I want to begin by acknowledging Wiradjuri country and Wiradjuri people who are here today, and particularly I want to thank you for teaching me about Yindamara, the power of doing things slowly. So I was meant to be a lawyer, right? That's at least was my plan when I was 11 years old. I'd worked it out over many Saturday nights spent on the couch with my grandma, watching a TV show about lawyers called Rumpole of the Bailey. Look, for anyone who's young, Rumpole was a bit like Suits, but not sexy. I was pretty serious about it, and when I finished school, I enrolled in a law degree and got a job working for a lawyer. But in my second year of university, when I was 19 years old, mental illness shattered my plan. I had a psychosis and I was put in the psychiatric ward of a public hospital for 2 months. It was confusing and terrifying and banal. We'd try and lighten the mood. Sometimes we would perform Nurse Ratched impressions when it was medication time, but it was still one of the worst experiences of my life. In the days before I was discharged from hospital, I overheard my doctor talking to my parents. He said, "She's unlikely to make a full recovery." No one had ever been that direct with me. All I got was platitudes and false hope. They probably thought that the truth would be too much. But as it turned out, hearing those words changed my life. Look, I don't want to sugarcoat the pain that comes from feeling like my life was over. But there was more than just pain. There were questions like, if my life as it was over, then who else could I be? And there was a reckoning. If my life could be upended so quickly before it had even really begun, I had to focus on what actually mattered. It didn't take long for me to ditch the idea of becoming a lawyer. I replaced it with trying to change the world. I gravitated towards things that move me. I got involved in the student movement's fight against rising university fees because I knew what a life changer higher education could be. As a kid, my dad did a free education economics degree, and it changed my family's life. I helped build the movement to try and stop the war in Iraq, as opposed to Iraq, the one a few years ago, honouring my grandma's stories of war and living through the Blitz. But our failure to stop that war gave me a new question. I wanted to find new and better ways to make a difference. I helped set up GetUp to experiment with online campaigning. I did a PhD in coalition, I was very serious, right? A PhD in coalition building and researched around the world. And that led me to find community organising. Having spent my 20s searching in my 30s, I set out to build Australia's largest and most diverse community coalition. The Sydney Alliance was brimming with ambition, a people's response to the Cronulla riots, a way for unions to keep connected with communities after your rights at work. The Alliance took a relationship-driven way of making a difference that had begun in the United States and had been taken to the United Kingdom, but had never been successfully tried here. We built something really big, 49 organisations. It was unusually diverse. The Jewish Board of Deputies and the Cancer Council, the Nurses Union and the Muslim Women's Association. These were organisations that didn't only not really know each other, they often didn't really even like each other, but they could see that they had a common fate in the city in which they lived. What I loved most about organising was how it understood the art of making a difference. It wasn't just trying to win some big new policy or change some new law, but it was more seeing social change like a struggle up a mountain. The pioneer of community organising, a guy called Solsitce, described it. If making a difference is like climbing a mountain, then we must visualise a mountain with no top. When we see the top, and we climb on up, and the overcast rises, and we merely find ourselves on a bluff. The mountain continues on up. Now we see the real top ahead of us and strive up the mountain further to only realise we're at another bluff. The top's still above us, and it goes on and on interminably. I felt like I had been on an open-ended climb since recovering from my psychosis, and community organising finally felt like a fit. But I still had bipolar. I know you want this to be a happy story, but look where we are. This isn't the night for stories that end in happily ever after. For years I struggled with my mental illness while running the Alliance, but it was a stressful job, and after 9 years, I had a second psychosis. But that was not the worst of it. After my recovery, at my return to work meeting, I met with the Sydney Alliance board. In a meeting that lasted no more than 7 minutes, I was told I no longer had a job. I was sacked by my own creation for having a mental illness. At the time, I didn't have words to describe what had happened, but now I see it as grief. The word grief derives from the Latin word meaning to be burdened, and the grief I carried had so many dimensions. It was practical. I urgently needed a new job. It was emotional. I lost so many of my friends when I lost the Alliance. So many people I had known stepped back and away when all this happened. And there was also a rumour mill of stories about how crazy and unstable I was. There was also the banality of recovery, the manic depressive aftershocks in the years that followed the psychosis, the endless search for good or less bad medicine that brought with it all manner of cruel side effects like weight gain, acne, tongue spasms and broken digestion. A parade of new doctors and therapists, exercise plans, mindfulness courses, endless attempts to use personal responsibility strategies to try and manage my fitful mind. But these immediate challenges gave way to a bigger and more overwhelming grief. The realisation that what had ended was not just my job, but the plan I had for my life. Recovering from a psychosis at 19 had given me a vision of the change maker I wanted to be. But decades later, mental illness stripped me of any hope I had of realising that dream. It was a heavy sadness. I still feel it. But as I walked forward, I also found that carrying that loss created its own kind of space where other things could grow. 3 years after they sacked me, the Sydney Alliance held an event with 100 community leaders where they publicly apologised for what they had done. At that event, for the first time, I spoke at length about what it was like to live and work with bipolar. The day was miraculous. It is so much easier for either side of a conflict to blame and to shield themselves with righteousness and anger than it is to open the door to reconciliation. But there was more than that. Having the chance to share my loss, my grief, my burden, created the space for something new. It was that time when I first started to realise that my experience of living with mental illness had a lot to teach about how to make a difference. I could see how my so-called private mental illness, my private shame, was deeply connected to public life. Not only did public life at work with its stress and challenges affect my private mental health, but what I'd been forced to grapple with grief and uncertainty about learning to live with loss, had something to say about the challenge of being a social change mountain climber. I struggled as a mountain climber, but I'm not the only one. I had a private adversary in my mental illness, but we have no shortage of existential adversaries in the bigger public world as well. Take your pick. Climate change, war and devastation, Gaza, Ukraine, the rest of the Middle East, inequality, terrorism, right-wing populism, geopolitical meltdown, a mental health system that is literally breaking under crisis. But when these issues are talked about in public, the daily conversation is nothing short of a sanitised denialism. It's like platitudes. She'll be right. Don't you worry. You can vote for a politician who'll fix it for you. Sign up to an NGO and they can lobby for you. Be a good consumer, do your bit for climate and buy an electric car. Or you could put your faith in green tech or AI or an abundant market and that'll sort it out. The message is someone else has got this. It reminds me of having bipolar and being told by the medical system that they knew what they were doing. But whether we are talking about the crises in the world or the crises in our mental health, we know this isn't true. But we often cling to this false hope because the overwhelming scale of the crises that we are facing is making us more and more aware of the limits of our ability to act and make a difference. That dawning realisation, that burden, sounds a lot like grief. To prepare ourselves to live with our limits while we make a difference, we can learn a lot from those who have learnt to live with mental illness. In the same way that the doctor told my parents that I might not recover, we too face the genuine possibility that our public life, our climate, our people may not recover. It's not just that when we try and make a difference that it might not work out. It's a deeper truth that even as we try and make change, we may be striving for better while the big things in the world get worse. That no matter how hard we try, like me trying to find the right medication, we may never find a way back to the world that we thought was possible. How do you climb that mountain? Those of us that live with mental illness are a walking reminder that it is still worth trying to make the climb. When it comes to making a difference in the world, climbing is not about where you end up. Climbing is about each step you take. The sacred act is the act of climbing at all. We too often get trapped in the mindset that making a difference is about changing the world out there. But when we do that, we overlook the small work, the relationships, the learning, the connection that happens to us right here when we try and bring a better world into being. We don't need to give up on big goals, but we need to learn how to hold them differently. When I realised I couldn't be the change-making doer I hoped to be, I started to find ways to make a difference that honoured my limits. I could no longer be the one trying to run up the mountain, but I could be someone that could research and teach and mentor and write about how to make a difference. I could help others prepare for the climb. We are all mountain climbers. We just don't know which mountain we have to climb. It's why nights like this are so important. Not just because they bring the experience of suicide and mental illness into the light, but because when we do, we bring the insights and lessons that come from our grief, from our personal struggles with mental illness. We bring them into the world in ways that can actually help us all. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to change my metaphor now. Not a sourdough starter, but a mountaineer mentor or a tour mentor. She'll get you up that next crag, and she also torments, agitates, advocates. What a power of good. Amanda Tattersall, thank you so much. Again, such a wonderful series of speakers we've had tonight. So personal, so practical, and so positive, despite dealing with some very bleak issues. And there's this wonderful book I've just finished reading. It's about insomnia, of all things. It's by Samantha Harvey, who went on to win the Booker for Orbital last year. But in this book called The Shapeless Unease, she talks about living with insomnia. And the art of falling asleep is not to think that you want to fall asleep, which is like the art of dealing with depression is to try and not think of depression. But the more you don't think of something, you think of it. So in the end, you become this absolute tormented mess, trying to relinquish what you carry so that you can embrace what you want. And she calls this stage of anxiety, this stage of fear that we all experience, whether it's finding sleep or finding happiness or finding connection, she talks about nocturnal forgiveness. And it's this idea of be kind to yourself. Just declare an amnesty to your worries for a moment. And may sleep come. May connection come. We all carry those burdens. Even Tupac said, behind every sweet smile is a bitter sadness that we can only begin to see and feel. Everyone here tonight are carrying those burdens. And it's really a case of coming together as a community, as a village, here and wherever you might be receiving tonight, and just know that you are not alone. And for the last 13 years, we've been impressing that message, and the message will never grow old. You are not alone. On the program, there are so many services that you can reach out towards, from Beyond Blue to Headspace and many other services. But this is a chance for us to thank those who have been so instrumental in putting together a night like tonight and the last 13, because it's not just the winter solstice, it's everything that goes with it. All the agencies, all the groups and committees and volunteers, from Audette and Paulie just making that glue vine, to the fireys here with the braziers ready to put things out, to the bump-in crew, to the lights, to the sound, to Stodge, to Helen, to Jess. I could go on, but I thought, why not get the two culprits of the winter solstice to step up for the first time in 13 years and say hello and say their thank you, and afterwards we'll hear in a finale from Northern Folk. If you could make very welcome Stuart and Annette Baker.
Thank you, David, for those words, and thanks everyone for coming out every one of these last 13 years. It's really made it happen, this community. It's amazing. Our committee has been hardworking and wonderful. And even though we're not going to have this physical event again in this space, there will be something happening every year on the 21st of June on the solstice, and it might be bigger and different than what we've come to know in the last few years. So thank you, and Annette has to say something.
I would just like to say that the Albury Wodonga community have actually owned this event since its first year and until now, and we are grateful. There would be no event if you were not sitting out there in the freezing cold. And thank you. Thank you for turning up.
I asked Stuart, he said, yep. And then asking Annette was the next challenge, but it was so lovely to have their faces and their voices as something of a finale for our final physical event, number 13. I'm not superstitious. In fact, I think it's even better that we've embraced our so-called fears and phobias, and tonight is the final physical night. But as you've just heard, there are some grand plans afoot, and I'm sure the committee, the bakers and other agencies and people involved will let you know when that is clear what the next direction is. It will be attached to the longest night of the year. That's an important part of it, because no matter how dark it is, and I presume there's still people out there, there will be a dawn, there will be daybreak at the end of the longest night. And to conclude what has been our 13th and beautiful night, it's been an exceptional night, I would love to introduce for the final time Northern Folk to see us conclude tonight's event. Thanks so much for being part of it, and thank you, everyone, for being part of the 13th and final winter solstice.
I don't believe in an interventionist God. But I know, darling, that you do. But if I did, I would kneel down and ask him not to intervene when it came to you, not to touch a hair on your head, to leave you as you are. If he had to direct you into my arms, oh Lord, into my arms, oh Lord, into my arms, oh Lord, into my arms. I don't believe in the existence of angels, but looking at you, I wonder if that's true. But if I did, I would summon them together. And ask them to watch over you. To each burn a candle for you, to make bright and clear your path, and to walk like Christ in grace and love and guide you into my arms. Into my arms, oh Lord. Into my arms, oh Lord. Into my arms, oh Lord. Into my arms. But I believe in love. I know that you do too. I believe in some kind of love. We can walk down, me and you. So keep your candles burning, your journey bright and pure, and she'll keep returning always and evermore. Into my arms, oh Lord. Into my arms, oh Lord. Into my arms, oh Lord. Into my arms. Right.
Just thank you. Thank you for being here. There are so many speakers we've had over the 13 years. To single out one or two would be absolutely wrong. But straight to mind comes Archie Roach, who we think of. Pat McGorry, who's been an absolute driving force. We've had Kerry O'Brien. I think Lauren Jackson was brilliant on the Zoom session, and thank God she wasn't on mute. I think too about Rose Batty and sharing the pain that she carried. I think too about Ian Roberts and talking about the courage of being himself in that machismo world of rugby league. I think about First Nation voices like Stan Grant. I could go on, but you have been there all the way, and if you haven't been, there are ways that you can find all those speakers on the website. The website, I'm sure, will be one of the first portals that will announce what the new direction will be, but it will be about care, it will be about connection, and it will be about you. So lastly, thank you. It's been a privilege to be part of these 13 years as well. I've been David Astle and you have been here every year, and we are deeply appreciative of that. Thanks for coming along tonight. Go well into this dark night and look after yourselves. Thanks again.